buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Greetings and welcome back, Buffer Timers, as we talk the Picard Season 3 finale and series finale. This is the first wrap-up of a Star Trek series in 20 years. So we've got a lot to say. The first hour here, we're going to talk mostly about the episode itself. And then we're going to spend a whole nother nearly hour talking about the series. So stick with us, Buffer Timers. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
Hi, I'm Del. I'm a Buffer Timer.
I'm N Squared from N Squared, Nathan.
Hey, I'm Lieutenant Commander Eve Zellick, USS Lilith.
I am Scott of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
Okay.
Why did I just echo?
Weird. It's on Eve. Go ahead, Robbie. And
I'm Robbie Sherman. Conversations with Robbie Sherman. We just put a new episode out the last week or so. Please check us out.
And Vanessa.
And hi, I'm Vanessa, and I have a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
I was trying to get Eve back in there. Yeah. Anyway, so before we get into Picard, we've got just a little bit of news to talk about. How do you guys feel about Section 31 being a movie?
I'm happy with it, actually. Like, we're bringing it down from a series down to just one little movie.
Section 31, Michelle Yeoh, enough said.
Let me tell you something. We need more movies in the Star Trek universe. We gotta bump these odd-numbered things being the bad ones. You know, we can fill up things with movies. That's a good way to fill in some space between a new series. I'm fine with it.
I'm not a big Section 31 fan, but what I like about this is that it opens up the door to explore other, I don't want to say minority plot lines or alliances or whatever. We can look at other things and make a movie rather than have to go, okay, now we need to write an entire series about the Trill.
Fair.
Am I better on the audio, guys?
Oh,
yeah, that's way better.
I switched to my phone.
Yeah, as far as the movie, I think it's going to be a better idea, especially for Michelle Yeoh, who, she's getting older. It's kind of hard to keep playing the kick-ass character into your late 60s if it's a long-running series. But
Then explain Harrison Ford doing another Indiana Jones.
I don't want to try because I didn't even like the last one, which was, 15 years ago at this point? Or 10? It's been a minute.
Was it?
I don't know. I just remember South Park doing an episode on it.
I've been trying to forget both of those things.
Yes. But what I'm saying is I think she can do a much better job and then slide back into the other movies and other things that she is very involved in.
I agree on the scheduling point. I just fundamentally have an issue with Section 31 being a sanctioned part of Starfleet to begin with. Torture seems fine in the Federation in this iteration of Trek, and that's just a line we cross and we never talk about it. So there's that. But also, I'm glad that it's confined to a movie, but I just wonder about the way that Trek is beginning to be marketed as a Marvel analog for Paramount. And I think, the fact that it was described in phases and Robbie actually mentioned I hope they do more movies. They will. Apparently there's supposed to be a movie coming out once every 2 years. So you're on the money with that one. So
following the Star Wars formula.
Right. They're following the Star Wars, the Marvel Universe type formula where it's we'll have shows and because that's central to what Star Trek is, and we'll have the movie just sort of pad it out. So I just wonder, there's no real ethical or moral compass, and yes, Michelle Yeoh in a movie would be awesome. I just don't understand how this fits what this show's about.
I'll be honest, Vanessa, I'm guessing Archer's not one of your favorite captains then, because Archer wasn't above torture. I mean, that guy's ethics were pretty gray.
Though, to be honest, Archer is probably the most... the white whale that he went after was probably the most justified.
And they also, I think, dealt with a lot of the dubious stuff Archer and also Cisco did. Whereas, like, that torture scene you mentioned was just there. And I think a lot of the dubious stuff in modern Star Trek, not all of it, but a lot of it is just kind of there and not even addressed.
Exactly.
I kind of wonder if they're doing it because overall, I mean, if you look at TV and movies overall, everything's getting more violent, I guess. Like, it's almost like they're trying to make Star Trek fit in with everything else because the audience's appetite for violence, or at least they think the audience's appetite for violence has grown.
I don't know if it's necessarily just violence, but like simple. It's simple. The Borg being bad is a simple thing. The changelings being uniformly bad is simple, rather than like saying having Picard be put in a position to like build a relationship like he did in season 2 with the Jurati Borg. Why not try to make inroads with the Borg and the changelings for that matter and go, hey, maybe torturing you guys wasn't such a hot idea. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we shouldn't have experimented on you and tried to wipe you out with genocide, but we don't come full circle on that. We just sort of like, we beat them. That's it.
Wasn't that line with the changeling specifically? Because that really bothered me. Like, Dr. Crusher asked, are we so morally astray that we're prepared to just like execute Vedic? And Picard essentially went like, yeah.
Yes.
God, the worst part of an otherwise amazing episode, that one.
So the other big piece of news we had this week, we got the drop of a Strange New Worlds trailer, finally.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of that? And what are you looking forward to in Strange New Worlds?
Number 1. I want to see what happens with number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what they're doing in their little space suits out there, like working on something. I don't know what like the whole scene is, but there's a moment where they're like working on a ship, and it obviously looks like a panicked moment, and that seems like it'll be interesting. I always enjoy when we have to go out and tough something out in our space suits.
Yeah, they don't exactly say that La'an is back in like the first episode, but it kind of seems like it. So I'd like to know what it was that she got resolved so quickly between, the last episode and this season.
We got a couple comments from a listener, Norman, and he says, looks good, referring to Strange New Worlds, and hoping Kirk is not joining the Enterprise. Keep him on his own ship for some years.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the teaser. Like briefly.
Quite a bit.
He is, and he's a good actor, but I really don't like him as Kirk. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I just don't like him.
You are not alone.
No, yeah. Is that common, actually? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think... I think it's a case like Benedict Cumberbatch where it's a complete miscast. Like,
Yes.
great actor trying to take on a great character, but it's really just a mismatch. It's on neither of them. It's just not a good match.
I think it's credible to me as like a younger version of Kirk, slightly less disciplined. This is the guy that cheated on his exam at Starfleet. So I don't really see him as like, super buttoned down as he is on TOS. And that's by design, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely. I read a thing, I think from both the actor and showrunner, that they they knew they couldn't just like recapture William Shatner's Kirk and just do that. I mean, no one but Shatner probably can do that performance. So they intentionally
Chris Pine killed it.
Chris Pine made a good Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think what they want to do is they intentionally reimagined Kirk and did like a different interpretation of the character. So they intentionally made this Kirk different from the original series 1.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's get into what we're actually here for. We've got Picard and so much of it to talk about in kind of a weird season. Let's start off by asking, is this episode more of a backdoor pilot than a finale?
Possibly.
I wouldn't say more, but it could be kind of like equal parts.
I could see that, yeah.
I'm sticking by my idea that this was a great finale for TNG, but it was not a good finale for Star Trek Picard.
I'm with Del.
It felt super disconnected from the last 9 episodes to me.
Yes, I agree.
It felt like they tried to stuff a lot in there. Like, I mean, it honestly, the whole thing reminded me of working at Taco Time as a teenager and trying to stuff a 1-pound burrito. Like, I mean, that's what it felt like, was trying to stuff the bloody 1-pound burrito. Like, they're trying to put everything in there all at once. And it's like, okay, so we had 8 episodes of Snooze Fest. We had episode 9, which was getting somewhere. And then episode 10 is like, let's just dump it all.
Like, I love how this season was structured, just on an ironic level, because we had like 8 episodes of nothing. We're just in a nebula, we're in a gravity well, we're just being chased, we're in a space station or a museum or whatever. It's just blah, blah. And then episode 9 comes around, and then there's this like sharp turn left. And suddenly we're in a Borg situation. So that whole changeling thing doesn't really matter anymore. That it doesn't even come up until like the very, very end of this episode, when through the transporter they can filter out who's a changeling or not.
Right. Yeah.
But like, we never find out who the bad guy is. We never find out what happens to Lyris. There's so many loose ends. Like,
we're coming.
how did Beverly go from criminal to like head of Starfleet Medical? Like, what?
I didn't even think of that.
Right.
We got a couple more comments from Norman. He says, possibly, I don't know if I still want more Rafi, which that's kind of fair. And then says, holding off the Borg, i.e. the Red Door mystery box, was one problem, and the Rogue Changelings were interesting on their own. The Rogue Changelings were interesting because, I mean, we saw Odo return to the Great Link, and then it's kind of like, well, we're never going to talk about changelings again. Well, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, the changelings were way more interesting than the Borg Queen for me. I mean, Alice Krieg aside, I am so glad to get Alice Krieg back.
Right.
But
I was too. I like.
This is the worst appearance of a Borg Queen in Star Trek for me, easily.
Like, no, this is the worst appearance of the Borg. Just period. The Borg.
There's a few other weird ones.
The makeup job on Alice Krieg, like the makeup job was. I don't even want to guess how many hours he spent in makeup getting ready for that, because that was something else, that makeup job.
And it's kind of a wasted effort, because it was sort of like she was just Rita Repulsa, just shaking her, punching the air. Like, no, that was all she was doing.
I loved when...
That's true. You know, giving her like, you know, fascist rhetoric, like, oh, you know, we'll be perfect and propagate and whatever, and it was unfortunate. I don't feel like they really gave her due, because like she's much more formidable than this.
You bring up something that I brought up in the chat this week. Why did she specifically use the word propagate over procreate? That was bothering me.
I'm gonna back up from that question, because I think my question encompasses it.
Okay.
I want you to think for a moment, how do Borgs make new Borgs?
Assimilation.
So in Q tells Picard that they assimilate technology, and they show an infant with Borg accoutrement.
They do.
And that was taken as, okay, that's a Borg baby. We've also seen Borg in maturation chambers that looked very, very young. So the question is, are they assimilating babies who can't really contribute to the whole? Or are we having a continuity issue with how Borg become Borg?
Well, here's a thought. I mean, considering they went after the people in Fleet who are under a certain age because it had to do with the level of development, maybe when they go after a civilization, they collect the ones under a certain age and start to assimilate them, because even if they can't contribute, maybe they make better Borg down the road, because by then the technology is just so encompassed. Like when Seven lost her cortical node, she couldn't live without it, but Icheb could adapt because he wasn't fully grown.
That's true.
Right.
So I'm kind of wondering if that's why they do it. Kind of like when, certain things that it's like when you break a bone as a child, it can heal almost completely. But if you break a bone as an adult, there's always going to be like a weakness there. So I kind of wonder if it's like that, like maybe they take advantage of the situation more than anything.
But that's why I get hung up on the whole reproduce versus, let's say propagate. I know that's wrong.
Propagate makes me think of plants.
I actually heard procreate. That's how much it should have been procreate.
I thought the point she was making was like correcting Picard, saying not procreate, propagate. So I don't know. Like there's a lot of inconsistent themes in this, and it's hard to read too deeply into it because it's hard to pick apart what was intentional and what's just bad writing, when you get to this level of like philosophical debate about the script. Like, did they intend to choose that word, or is that just something to make it sound more menacing?
Or like Norman says, organic Borg, apparently. That sounds like a grocery aisle. Get your organic Borg. Free range
organic.
Free range Borg.
Free range, grass-fed, antibiotic-free organic Borg. Now I'm imagining Borg in little potted plants. Something's wrong with me.
I'm imagining Borg cut up into little squares like on TOS.
Oh my god, the food cubes.
I'm seeing like one made of like that sickly Borg color.
Oh my god, I
like
actually
Borg Cabbage Patch. Borg Cabbage Patch.
Yeah. I totally got sick seeing the Borg, like the necrotized Borg. Like I don't know what they did to them, but yeah, like I said, they look like they were like leprosy or got MRSA or something. Like that. I was eating when I saw that, and I'm like,
just dry aged. It's just dry aged,
right?
Put it this way: I live in farming country. If meat looks like that, we throw it out. We don't eat it.
I mean, I kind of like the design they went, actually, with kind of like the Borg had just been kind of decaying in individual cubes for 20-something years. That's something I did like.
So do we think that this is the end of the Borg? Is this the last queen and the last chance? Or was this just another rogue sect, kind of like Girardi?
Yeah,
I know we're
gonna somewhere, don't we?
They're
I
not
don't
going
think
to
you
give
can
up the Borg.
ever go back to like a full-on collective that's a serious like threat to the galaxy, but I think you'll definitely have them popping up as like little cubes or small collectives. We know from Lower Decks that like they're way in the future. There's like that Borg kid, it class in like the far future.
That's true. Yep.
But it'd be really hard to do a big collective.
I honestly don't think we're going to get rid of them. I'm just hoping they're not going to pull a Doctor Who, and every time they need ratings and viewers, they pull the Borg off of ice. Just like with the last couple seasons of Doctor Who, it's like, yeah, we can't get viewers, so let's throw in John Barrowman, Daleks, and Cybermen all at once because that'll get people watching.
I mean, that's Doctor Who in a corner every time, but like, I just think like, just for perspective's sake, I don't know if I mentioned this the last time, but like, we've only had 6 episodes of Borg in TNG and 3 seasons of Borg in Picard. And it's like, they probably will bring it back, but I mean, it wouldn't be for the better because I think we've explored this concept exhaustively.
Right.
Who put Soylent Borg?
Every time it's just a little bit further from the original concept.
Who put Soylent Borg? That's funny. Soylent Borg. Scott?
So
yeah.
Did the Borg Queen have a plan here?
I mean, it's the same evil plan
Destroy.
every time, pretty much, isn't it? Just assimilate.
Well,
Yeah.
no, it was annihilate this time. It
Oh,
was
oh,
destroy
okay.
all. Like she has the line where Borg, not just to assimilate, but to annihilate all life in the galaxy. That was her plan.
I don't think she planned Jacksident happening, but once she figured it out, I get the sense that she decided to take advantage of the situation, because I really don't think they planned that, because there was nobody knew that had never really happened. There had never been a freed Borg who had kids. So I'm thinking she found out about it and took advantage. But I don't think she planned so far, like 20 years back, to, have Picard boff crush her and she has an illegitimate child. Like, I don't think she planned that.
I would just think like Annihilation is antithetical to what the Borg are about, because they're about assimilation, and that's how they survive. So if their goal is to kill everything, they're actually killing themselves. So and yeah, I don't get it.
Well, they can't learn if they don't assimilate either, so that doesn't help, because that was why they couldn't defeat 8472, was because they couldn't assimilate them, so they couldn't learn about them, because they're limited that way.
I think it.
Go
ahead. Oh, I think it makes sense that like maybe the Borg could potentially be so like angry that they go on basically a murder rampage, but even if it's like the most sensible thing in the world, it takes away what made them interesting in the first place. So I don't want to watch them.
Norman has an interesting point. B'Elanna was a Borg and had a baby later. Would
How long
Mira
was she
have
a
been another
Borg? Oh, like 5 minutes? I don't remember this.
It was the one, I can't remember which episode, but I know the one that Norman's referring to, where several of them got Borgified so they could infiltrate.
Yeah.
But I'm no good with the episode titles. I'm not good with that. I just remember the episode.
I think you're overestimating the amount of Star Trek these writers have watched. So there's your answer.
Yeah,
I feel like I've watched.
Abrams.
Robbie?
I was just gonna say, I feel like I've watched more Star Trek on a whole than this whole show has. Like, this show feels like a really badly written novel that was put out in 1992 when things were kind of going okay and they could really bleed off some money.
Here's what I'll say about that, Robbie. Some of the best showrunners, and here's something I know Nathan's gonna probably jump on me for, but some of the best overall showrunners have been some of the worst people that haven't necessarily gotten Star Trek. Was Rick Berman era actually pretty good compared to all the others? Yeah. Yeah. Is he a terrible person, and did some episodes suffer because of him? Yes. Overall, pretty good. Terry Matalas. Now here's a weird case, because it's somebody that clearly gets Star Trek. We finally have a showrunner that gets Star Trek, understands most of it from A to Z, but I don't think he's a great showrunner. He's shown in the last couple episodes to be a great director. I have no problem with the direction and how people were directed and how the actors came through, but Terry as a showrunner has not shown me the ability to rein in the writers and show us the little things that we need to see and fill in the moments with better pieces in the run of a show.
So I'm not actually going to jump on you, because no, I'd agree. Rick Berman was great at his job, but by being basically not a good person, I don't think he deserves that job.
That's fair.
But it is interesting coming here at the end on kind of the buffer time, because I actually did quite enjoy the first 9 episodes, but this one I really didn't enjoy. It just felt so disconnected in like a different season almost in terms of quality.
I kind of agree with Norman's comment about Berman here. The decontamination chamber being the most obvious. Yeah, that was literally there for one reason.
Yeah.
The sexy time room.
Yeah, as far as I know, too, in the other part of Norman's comment there, I believe Terry Farrell said that was the reason she quit the show was because of Rick Berman being Rick Berman. Because I know there was a few actors who had quite a lot of problems with him.
That's one of the reasons you'll hear that why Gates McFadden left in season 1.
Have you ever noticed how the only people to quit Star Trek are women?
Yep.
Yep.
Nope, hadn't noticed that at all. It's not a completely and totally glaring piece of canon at this point.
I mean, he's the reason behind the cat suits, too, if I recall, like why we had to watch Counselor Troy basically be window dressing.
And again, that's why I'm saying, did some episodes and did some actors definitely, and particularly actresses, suffer under him? Yes. But did the writers come to a confluence and were just a coherent unit because of his management? Also, yes.
I feel like the episodes that have the heaviest Ron Moore influence suffer because of it, personally.
Sub Rosa.
Yeah. Well, that and just The Perfect Mate, I think, was something that he was a huge fan of, and it's one of the worst things in that season. So it's just, I feel like there was definitely a slider, like far enough away where he's not actually like influencing the theme, but close enough where he's managing. Yeah.
The thing is, watching other shows that have Ronald D Moore on them, you get way better show. So
#Outlander.
Oh yeah.
So let's get back to the show that we're actually talking about here. One of the last pieces of Borg related topic that we had. How did the Borg hide a conduit right under the Federation's nose in the Great Red Spot of Jupiter? How? Where's Jupiter Station? Yes. What's going on here?
Well, I assume that the changelings basically let them, because they're running Starfleet. They could just look the other way. But the show doesn't bother to explain why the changelings are working for the Borg, so...
That's another thing I don't like about this season. We never really get an in-depth look at how the Changeling and Borg are really working together, because it seems like the Borg took over all these people, and then you still have Changelings out there, but you just have regular people as well in the middle of this. So how are they like an integral part of this plan when the Borg are supposedly so powerful they can take over all these people as soon as they get Jack? It all just, it feels like it kind of comes out in the wash.
Well, I mean, they probably can't assimilate changelings because they would have tried. I mean, they're Borg; they'll assimilate anything. They'd assimilate their own dogs. But
You're right.
I'm guessing they can't assimilate the changelings. But the one thing that the Borg and the changelings both have in common is they want to bring order to chaos. They're all about the order to chaos thing, because. Yeah. So I think in its case, it's one of those things of almost making a temporary alliance. For me, it would have been interesting to see who would turn on who. Like, because at the end of the day, if they had one, somebody's got to turn on somebody because they can't both exist.
And listening to you say that, like, it makes me want that in the show, but I don't get that. I get all this other stuff that doesn't have anything to do with that plot line. And since they put that plot line in there, like within the last couple of episodes, it feels so rushed. It's such a frustrating experience.
I want to just jump in for a quick second. Norman, this was another case of plot by tweet. The first one we got was about Elnor surviving, and he did not die in the USS Excelsior. And then the second one was, yes, the Borg Queen was the face. So both of these plot points came out via Twitter.
Vanessa, please say what you said in chat.
Yes. Just to remind everybody, it was Rick Berman that is the problematic showrunner, not Ron Moore. Those are two different people.
True.
Oh, okay, but no, what you said about
tweeting plots.
You were just what was your answer to that?
Yeah, I said that like if you have to tweet your plot, you failed as a writer. There's no reason that any of this needed to be a mystery. Like, if that is obviously something he left out, that's a loose end that he very quickly recognized. It's almost like he didn't want to spoil it, but beforehand, so he waited until after the episode was aired to clarify, because he's like, well, I messed up, I might as well just wait until it airs. Like, that's so bad. And nothing is, and not only that, but nothing is enhanced with those details at all. It feels like an afterthought. Like the Borg Queen looking absolutely nothing like that hand monster is just, it's giving lazy.
I really feel like they were using the changelings as a giant red herring. I think it got everyone really excited because there's now going to be a crossover with DS9 and TNG, and that there a lot of people are still invested in the idea of the Dominion War and want to know what's going on with that. So it felt like they were like, hey, come watch this show about changelings. Psych, it's about the Borg, but we're not going to tell you about it until the finale or the episode before the finale. I felt really red herring, or like the carpet, or whatever analogy you want to make. Or I'm a huge DS9 fan, and you guys know when I first saw First Officer Shifty, I was super excited to think about there were going to be changelings. And as soon as the Borg showed up, I was like, and then it died.
It almost feels like the season was a cock block or blue balls. Take your pick.
Norman has a really good observation. But years later, will the Twitter post be attached to streaming and DVD sets? And they probably
exactly. It's going to be in the booklet. Like, look, he tweeted this.
Oh, I imagine, like in the last Airbender, where you'd often watch it and they'd have those like director's commentaries or whatever pop up in text, just like you're watching the show and a full-on Twitter little box pops up and it's like.
Oh my God, that would be like pop-up video in Canada on Much Music.
Pop-up video.
Like, making it the Borg Queen also opens up a question. Like, how does the Borg Queen have any sway over the changelings at all? How is she a threat at all? If she's so, like, backed into a corner that she needs to ally herself with them. It doesn't make any sense, the top-downness of it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also realizing the changelings probably could have done all of this without the Borg. Like, if their goal is to destroy the Federation, if they just take over every captain or like the captain of the strongest ships, you can still just bomb Earth if you want. Like, you're still in charge of the fleet. You just have to take over like the one person who can initiate that formation thing. And then you don't need the Borg. Like, the Borg aren't needed for the changelings.
The connection between these two things is so thin that you have to really think about it.
What was in it for the changelings from the Borg? What did they promise them?
That's the thing.
What is going on? There's so much plot missed.
Did they pull a Britain after World War II and just say, okay, we'll do this and then we'll carve up the galaxy along these lines and you can have your piece and we'll have our piece? Like, it doesn't make sense.
But this wasn't even like the official Dominion, and we don't even know if this is the official Borg anymore.
Right. And they're all both totalitarian. So there's no reason for them to ally each other if their goal is to assimilate everybody or destroy everybody. Like, their goals are in conflict, not in harmony.
And I mean, to play devil's advocate, you can say the same thing about some actual like totalitarian regimes that have allied together. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think Norman's got a point there too. Like, the Borg would not spare the Great Link because they wanted 847. They were willing to ally with Janeway to get rid of 847 too. And she repaid them by turning them into lepers.
They pretended to ally to Janeway, and then they were going to betray her.
Well, yeah, but she knew that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But were the Axis powers really allied? Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just going to stop.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe I don't know enough about World War II.
They were when Captain America was around, punching Hitler in the face.
Yeah.
And Indiana Jones was there.
It came later.
Why didn't we see Borgatti in this. Why didn't the natural ally of the Federation to help against a Borg threat show up? Is it for the same reason that Laris and her husband in season 1, the Romulans that are under Picard's control, that want to go out and help him, get left at home in a plot about the Romulans? Is it the same thing? Yes. Yes, it is.
I have to wonder if some of it is they just didn't want to have to recast the role because of the actress passing. And then they just didn't think about it past that. Because, I mean, she did do a great job with the role, but I almost kind of wonder if it's like what what was done, considering we've compared this to Marvel, with Black Panther. Rather than recast Black Panther, they've just moved on to having his sister or whatever become Black Panther. So I kind of wonder if they just decided not, they just said, you know what, out of respect, we're not going to recast her, and we'll just hope the audience forgets about her. I don't know.
Sorry, which actress died? I'm not aware of this.
The actress who played the new Borg Queen in season 2, I can't remember her name. Yeah, she died this past like a few months ago. She died from cancer. See. She was literally filming the show with cancer the same way Chadwick Boseman did Black Panther.
All right, let's move on from the Borg, shall we? And yeah, let's just address another one of these big weird points. What Laris? Why even?
We all said in the beginning that like it was a given that the last scene of the finale was going to be Picard and Laris having drinks at whatever place they agreed to meet up at. And I kept waiting for that to happen. Like with all of the fake goodbyes that we got, like I kept waiting, even maybe a flashback or something that just says, hey, Laris, I'm learning more and more about myself and I understand myself more and I can give myself to you more. The only reason I can see them like nixing all of that is because they want it to seem like Picard and Crusher are at least going to become co-parents, if not a couple.
I just feel like Laris was just an emotional anchor for him at the chateau, and that's it. We barely even know her. Who is Laris? Why does she really love Picard other than just being in the same vicinity for an extended period of time? And the weird like employee-employer relationship there. I mean, it's a little, you know, with Romulan's relationship with the Federation, it's a little funky.
Hey, she's older than him. It's cool.
Well, and I like what Norman says. Laris to Picard like Alexander to Worf, I guess. Yeah. Just forget about it.
Oh,
that's no, but not untrue.
Not untrue.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, Picard also has the romantic he has the romantic intelligence of a teaspoon because he's the guy who goes to Risa and wants to read novels. So,
yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but if I was on Risa, yeah, I'm not reading novels.
Well, I mean, he was clearly ignorant a little bit of their culture because he didn't even know what a Horgon statue was. So he really believed that going there to read was like a normal thing. And, you know, just thought, ooh, look, I'm just going to put this statue here and nothing's going to result from that. So, you know, I think they tried to make him a little bit of a bumbling.
That one bothered me anyway because Risa has such a reputation throughout the fleet that how do you not know?
Right.
That's literally like saying you don't know what the US version of Spring Break looks like.
I think like for a lot of Star Trek, they sort of made him a bit of a eunuch. And just completely divorced him from having that. And maybe he was just going through a phase. I don't know. But like I could see him being like, oh, people do that still? You know. So.
Except he's not fully a eunuch, he's just an emotional eunuch, maybe.
At the same time, though, I am sitting here trying to wonder if spring break means the same thing to me as it does to you. So it's possible maybe he is just that ignorant.
I'm thinking like, well, up here, yeah, like, because I'm in Canada, I'm thinking like we see U.S. spring break as literally the Girls Gone Wild videos because that's what it looks like.
You're not wrong either.
Well, I mean, well, you spent time in Florida, Dustin, so you're better able to answer that than I am because Florida seems
at least in the early 2000s when I was down there.
I mean, I'm more from like community college experience and like online classes. So spring break to me is like being at work. I don't understand it.
You know, to me, spring break is going home for spring.
And for me, I was in university when I was 14, so spring break was just a week off to pick up extra work shifts at my job, so it didn't mean anything to me.
I didn't have the money to travel, so for me it was like a week of shoveling snow at home.
I'm so bad. The first time I watched TNG, in like season 7, when Picard and Crusher have their minds connected, it's kind of the big episode where they realize they love each other. My reaction was, wow, that came out of nowhere.
Well, it didn't come out of nowhere, but
like, well, exactly.
It took 6 seasons to come back to it.
I never noticed across 6 seasons they blatantly have feelings for each other.
I mean, actually, yeah, there's a couple other moments. I mean, they've got their morning breakfasts that they do together, which is clearly more for Beverly than for Picard.
I mean, Naked Now, they are.
Yeah, where they explicitly say it, basically.
Right.
And then there's the weird one in Violations, which also is where the Majel reference from this week is from.
You get some mouth noises in that one, if I remember correctly.
With the whole like Crusher Picard thing, though, to me it was obvious from the start because why would she drag her 12-year-old son onto a ship of the man who supposedly killed his father? Like, seriously, why would you want to be serving under the captain who your husband died under if you loved your husband? No, she's always had a thing for him. I still say Wesley was not hit. I still say Wesley was Picard's other bastard, but
I feel like there is a way to have like a healing between the two of these characters over that. And I don't think in TNG we quite got there. I think we got close, but I think that what they're trying to do is have Jack be that Band-Aid for that rupture. But again, they don't really make the connection very strong other than Jack being named Jack.
Is the ticker year works? Did you put that in the ticker again, Scott?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the scene where Picard jacks in to the mainframe like a 90s hacker or something?
The Matrix.
I was thinking it felt more like early 90s hacker stuff before the Matrix, like the actual movie hackers, like when
it did
happens.
bring back a lot of memories of like the way that people interpreted computers in like 1993.
Yeah.
Like, I can just plug it into my eyeball and then see everything. And everyone was like, yes, that's what will happen in the future. I mean, we brought back that whole idea of like, I just shove this in my neck and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, but minds need to know, are the Borg USB or USB-C?
The USB, obviously.
Because I mean, they plug it right in and it goes right in. It goes right in normally. I mean, how many times do we have to flip a cable before the darn thing goes in?
Yeah. 3 times is this tradition.
Which one allows for more connections?
USB-C is more universal.
Now, yeah.
I just got the sense that this has like the same sort of vibe as like hero protagonists in Snow Crash when they go into the metaverse, as it's known, that kind of thing where it's just like a digital living space and you have like following code everywhere. It was very Matrix Snow Crash.
There are other people around because there are voices.
All right, point.
Oh, that's right.
You don't have to show other people. You can just put the voices in.
Yeah.
I like Norman's comment. Picard is positronic, so would he plug in like data? He plugged into Crusher very well.
Yeah.
Tell.
Excuse me for a minute. I have to laugh maniacally.
All right. So let's change topic here a little bit. How do you feel about Seven and Rafi and how their story ended up just for this season? We'll talk more about this in the overall Picard arc.
What actually is their story at this point? I feel like we've never had it really gone into.
I have to wonder if their story was kind of like there was that initial flame between them, and then things have happened since, so they've kind of slowed down where they're at, maybe, and they're obviously still comfortable with each other to a point, but I don't know if there's a relationship there beyond maybe friends.
This is a case study in queer baiting. Absolutely. As soon as, like, remember at the end of season 1 where they were like holding hands and that was supposed to be like drawing us in. Oh, are they in a relationship? You know, and then there's just this sort of buddy cop dynamic between the two of them. Oh, are they grew closer by the end of it, you know, and then because it doesn't service the plot and because Picard and Star Trek in general is terrified of lesbianism, they're just in separate ships doing different things for most of it until the very end. And she's second in command, which is very strange. And Seven gets to be captain of the Enterprise after stealing the Titan while someone's asleep, almost resulting in the entire Starfleet getting assimilated. Well, it did get assimilated and Earth almost got destroyed. So yeah.
Norman's got a point. Norman says, like in the Orville, the captain and the first officer are exes, which is true. And then he also says, we never saw Seven and Rafi together, but Stamets and Hugh were the real deal because we saw them together.
Well, it's kind of a thing in Star Trek that, like, men are allowed to do a lot of things, like both in and out of character, that women aren't allowed to do.
But that's
that's one of the reasons why I think we've had a good representation of a gay couple. We have good representation of NB and transgender people and all of these other categories. But this is the one we're still stuck on, is lesbians.
But that's a sci-fi thing in general. Because in sci-fi, women have always traditionally been, there to titillate the men. Like,
but Star Trek could do something better, and they've proven that. With Hugh and Stamets, with Adira and Gray. They've proven that they can go into a complex relationship that isn't heterosexual. They just seem to be obviously missing queer women. They show up like Janet Reno, but she's mourning over her dead partner. Like, we see Dax be very kind of, I would say bisexual, maybe pansexual, but she never has a not even one episode, significant relationship with a woman.
That's
his ex-wife, but that's a whole different
weird thought. I'm gonna throw a weird thought out there, Del, because you just tickled my brain. So this literally just popped into my head. And I could be totally wrong, but I'm going to throw it out there because it's a possibility. What if they were going with the idea that both of them are strong women and therefore don't need a romantic partnership? Because that's always been a thing too, where you take a strong woman and all of a sudden make her, lovesick like they did with Wonder Woman 1984. What if they were going with sort of that angle, like these two are, if they may or may not have a relationship, but they don't need a relationship.
See, that's like meta-contextual, and like it's sort of like thinking harder than the writers did about it, because they had 3 seasons to go into that dynamic. Like, oh, I just don't have this room for this in my life right now. Like Worf said on that one episode when the Klingon lady was trying to like come on to him or whatever. And that was really awkward, but like there could have been an emotional moment between Seven and Rafi to actually talk about their relationship. And there just hasn't been, beyond like, hey, you need to lighten up or something. That's not really fleshed out human beings to me.
To go back to a point I made earlier in a different episode. Go ahead. I lost it.
I was just going to say to Vanessa, the whole thing of Trekkies thinking harder than the writers do, like that never happens. I mean, we're sitting here literally picking it apart.
Sorry, bad memory struck again. I can't remember.
It's all right. We're going to come back to this in the next hour. I just wanted to touch on like where they're at right now, but we will definitely get to how we got here.
Before we leave the subject though, Dustin, can you put a link in the comments to the woman who did, or yes, I assume she identifies as female. The person who did the Queer Women at video that you shared with us. Do you think that's something? Because I think
MC Frodis did a video a couple of days ago, and I had posted a link in our chat about queer women in Trek. And Jesse Gender had done something on the topic here a couple weeks ago that was a little more long-winded, and I didn't 100% agree with, but both are excellent videos to go check out.
I'm going to try, actually, Del. I don't promise I'll get there, but I'm going to try and attend the panel at Calgary Expo next week that's all about queer in fandom, because there's a panel being put on by some of the LGBT groups here, literally addressing different things to do with queer depictions in fandom. And I'm not trying to offend anybody by using the word queer. It's literally just called queer in fandom. So
I identify as queer, so it's not offensive to me.
Okay, because I had somebody jump down my throat.
It's just the general catch-all topic now, or word now.
Well, okay. Really quick side of, and then I promise I'm done. It is a slur word that was reclaimed. So people who grew up in the era where it was a slur word do not like being called queer. In the same way that lesbians who were lesbians, let's say in the 60s and 70s, hate the word dyke because to them that was an insult. And so these words that we reclaim, we just need to make sure that we also honor their history. That's all I have to say about it as the stupid queer one.
Yeah, no, I just wanted people who are listening to know that it's literally just called that. Like I'm just repeating what's on the program. But I'm gonna try and get that panel for you. I'll try and get it. I'll try and make sure I attend if I can and see if I can video it for you because I would like to get your thoughts on it and Vanessa's as well, in particular.
And if Nathan wants in, or anybody else wants in, that would be cool.
Yeah. I don't want to presume anything for Nathan. I just know you two, so I just don't want to presume anything.
There, I just dropped the link in the chat to that one video.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's move on and talk about, because we're getting towards the end of our first hour here. What did you guys think about the re-registering of the Titan A to the Enterprise G?
I spent, I think, an hour going over this on my stream. I was extremely negative, and I'm not going to make it spend an hour here. That is my comments. It fundamentally doesn't work. That'll be my comment.
100% agree. 100%.
I just think they did it. I think they did it because they thought that fans would like it, but they didn't really put much thought into it.
Right. Yay, the season needs even more nostalgia to get us ready for the next great thing.
I mean, they already did the Titan dirty in that how much, the Titan's supposed to be like a retrofit or a refit, and how much of the original Titan is even there beyond the name. So,
yeah.
There's a point I want to add. I know you agree with me, Destin, that I somehow forgot in my hour on my own stream, but too soon for an Enterprise G.
What are they doing?
It doesn't make any sense that we have gotten from the D to the G in only 40 years.
That's about right. Yep.
Less than.
Also, are we supposed to look at it? Are we supposed to look at this as the flagship? Because I associate Enterprise with the flagship of the fleet, but the Titan is significantly smaller. It's like half the size, isn't it, as far as crew goes?
So what you're saying, Scott, is you like the fat ones?
Yes.
I had to throw that line out. I'm sorry.
Love the chunky ones.
I just, would think that it should signal to everyone on the show that maybe they could turn the lights on. Turn the freaking lights on. It's still so dark.
Oh, that firefight.
Did anyone else notice too with the, I said this earlier, the whole crew in particular, but Picard seems like this tired old man who should be well out to pasture, but the second he steps on the Enterprise D, all of a sudden he's got energy.
Everybody
makes
grew
no
back their
sense.
brain. I swear. It's like everybody just became like the reasonable Starfleet officer that they've been this entire time. But like for whatever reason in the 9 episodes prior, just forgot how to do their own job. Now they are like able to problem solve and think objectively about what to do next. Like, you know, of course, that like meter narrow gap in the Borg cube being traversed by a huge ship the Enterprise can fit in there.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, Norman's right. It's so they're only going to go a couple of
interesting.
letters for the next couple of centuries.
Well, isn't
Yeah,
the J 26th or 29th?
It's like 20. I think it's 26. It's only a few centuries after where they're at, or a century or so. But either way, we're only going to go a couple of letters in a century or two.
Pardon me?
Norman
Well,
gets
that's what we
points for
should.
there are no lights. There are no lights.
We should do like 2 or 3 Enterprises a century, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think the E was a bit soon and the F was a bit soon, but there were reasons I could kind of like let them go. But the G is just one step too far to me.
I agree.
What are they
It
going to
doesn't
do when
make
they
any
run out of
sense.
letters?
Start doing double A.
Enterprise AA, yeah.
Or I was thinking like alpha, beta.
Oh, yeah, go with Greek.
Yeah.
Yep.
Enterprise AA sounds like some sort of, help group for Klingons who drink too much.
Then you get eventually you get Enterprise with like that are just words. You'll get like the Enterprise hat eventually. I can't wait for the Enterprise sex. Like it keeps going on. You'll spell words.
They'd start
That's a good
looking like
thought.
band license plates.
Yeah.
I'm just stuck on this idea of like an AA meeting with Klingons. Like, I'm just.
Well, that would make like a great animated series for Mike McMahon to propose after Lower Decks, and it's
Like
just
a
like
short
it's just
thing.
just an AA meeting in the Star Trek universe, and you have
Like
all
a
these different
5-minute
characters
thing.
and races coming in through it. It could be great.
We don't need more than 10 minutes at the most if we're going to do that. 5 to 10 minutes. Let's
Yeah,
keep
like
it
a short. It would be great.
Yeah. Let's
If
not
you could short
marinate
track.
in that.
Yeah, this is what we need short treks back for. These kind of
Yes.
stories.
Oh my God, do we need more short treks in our lives? Like that's what should be filling these 8 weeks.
Quickies. We need quickies. The fantasy
Star Trek
magazine.
quickies. All right, that goes really well with Worf and his threesome.
Yes, that was an awesome line.
I almost
Worf-
used that for my tagline, but I was like, that's too obvious. So I will go for less obvious. So my name
like-
is the less obvious choice.
I
I
love
really
I love
like that
Riker.
Riker just points out to him, like, do you hear yourself? like he knows that Worf understands the patois of it all. Like he knows that Worf understands the subtext of that word.
They
I
guess.
have to say, I like it because it shows Worf got rid of the broom that's been up his ass.
I mean, like, they went on that planet in Justice where they were being towed into, rooms with barely clothed people, heavily hinting at things like that going on. So the fact that he's unaware of his own pun is just, it's really funny.
I just really like that one, Riker. Do you even hear yourself? Like, I like Riker of all people. I mean, Riker was the Lothario of the Enterprise. I mean, if it moved, he slept with it. So it's funny hearing him going, do you hear yourself?
It was nice to hear Worf get shot down again, because that hasn't happened in a while.
So our last big question before we move on to the series as a whole topic, what did you think about Q at the very end?
No surprise.
I actually was. I was very surprised. First off, that they wanted him back so soon, and that John Delancey was like, "Yeah, okay."
Well, the thing is, I said this in the chat, so Nathan probably didn't see it, but I said this in the chat. When I saw John Delancey at Expo last year, everybody kept asking him, like, is this it for Q? Is it for Q? Is there going to be more Q? And all he kept telling fans was, the trial never ends. So that's why it wasn't a surprise to me, because in a way, I think he was maybe trying to say, like, it's not the end for Q, but I can't say anything yet.
So,
And that reminds me, I just want to point out, we had a talk about the Q Continuum here a couple of months ago. We'd asked the question, was the trial ever about humanity, or was it always about Picard? And I guess we got that answered here, that it's always been about Picard.
Well, Q did say he chose Picard to represent all of humanity. Like in Farpoint, he mentions that. He makes it clear that he's using Picard as his sample, I guess, as to what all of humanity is. So I think in a way it's more about Picard, but I don't know. Because he treats him as a pet. So
I mentioned this in the chat, but it reminds me very much of the very end of Drop Dead Fred, when Drop Dead Fred shows up in front of the little girl and not the parents anymore. And like they pour paint all over the babysitter or something, and it's giving that, like, I'm your imaginary friend now. It again, like, there's so many other characters in the Trek universe that they could bring back and revitalize. Like, it just reminds me that one of the themes of season 3 is grave robbing. Nobody's dead forever. Like, they had an entire season, an arc, this really emotional thing between like Q and Picard and saying goodbye to him, and to just arbitrarily bring him back just cheapens the whole thing.
why couldn't they use Q Junior? That would have made more sense to me. Have Junior talk to Junior.
Ooh, that would have been
Del.
good, actually, yeah.
So I didn't share this with the chat, but I did go to Chat GPT and ask it to write a better finale for Picard season 3, or Picard in general, or Picard season 3. I can't remember which. In which it ends with Jack Crusher talking to a younger Q. And the first thing it told me was, I don't have access to Picard season 3, so I don't know the plot. But she did, or it suggested, hey, Paul. But what she suggested was she could write one for TNG. So it's up on my Facebook if you want to look at it. But what the best part of it was, because it became unclear. At the end of TNG, Q appears as Jack Crusher. And like Picard's like, you look familiar to me. And he's like, that's right, I'm Jack. And it's obvious throughout the dialogue that it's Jack Sr. But I thought, like, that would have been that is a better ending. To have dead Jack show up and be like, take care of her or something. That would have been better.
Yeah, I did see that post years earlier, Del, when I was flipping through my phone, and when you had posted the tag about, this came out better than I thought or something. Initially, I'm thinking, oh God, is this going to be like some sort of weird like fanfic thing? And it actually came out pretty good.
Yeah, for an AI, it wrote a good scene. It took a while to kind of zhuzher, but anyway, I love.
Are you saying that Chat GPT is better than the writers under Terry Metalis?
Yes. 100%.
That's a good short Trek, though. Just get an AI to write an episode and perform it. I'm down for that.
I don't actually think that ChatGPT is better than writers.
Oh, yeah. But
I think what happens is it allows fans, I guess, or other writers, whatever you want to call them, it allows them to kind of play in that universe to create scenes that will make them feel better about stuff that happens on Star Trek. Am I being too weird about this?
No.
Like, if something bad
really
happens in Star Trek and they kick a trans person in the face, I can go to GPT and be like, can you rewrite that scene so the trans person doesn't get kicked in the face? I like that. I like the ability that if something's really bothering me about any kind of media, I can go to AI and be like, fix that.
I can come up with something slightly better.
Okay.
Not better than Chat GPT necessarily, but like the person whose like relationship with Jack is that they're, is rock solid the entire time is supposed to be the relationship between Beverly and Jack. The fact that it wasn't Beverly trying to convince Jack to come back from the grips of the Borg Queen doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Like the real mother versus the not real mother. That source of conflict was just never explored. Like Beverly just goes, well, I just lost another son. Oh darn.
Yeah, something I noticed that really kind of bothered me here this season was how early in the season they were both Picard and Bev were doing this weird thing for them where they were not being Starfleet and they were being parents. And they were like, screw the rest of the galaxy. We gonna save our precious boy. And now they're all like, oh, well, we gotta do our duty. It's weird.
I didn't like the whole Picard all of a sudden standing there and saying, I got to go be a father. It's like, well, gee, why doesn't the mother be a mother? You could be a father. Like, Star Trek is bad parents. I've always said that, and I still hold to that. Star Trek is nothing but bad parents.
But with Picard, he didn't even know he was a parent until the day before. So I just want to know if they carry on with this Beverly character. Probably not. But I do wonder, is she thinking about how ridiculous it was to assume that Picard was going to be a horrible father and not let him do anything about this relationship for the past 20 years? Like, is she punching the air now? Like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, kept him away from his own father for no reason. Because he wasn't given the opportunity until that moment to even be one. And so to establish a connection at that very moment just doesn't seem very credible to me. And I guess the Borg thing is why they had that connection, but it's super flimsy.
I also want to add to that. I don't know if it happened necessarily in the finale as strongly, but I want to bring it up now anyway, is that when Picard was in the Nexus, he had kids. So there's a lot of times in this particular season where he talks about wanting to be a father, but not knowing what it's like or not knowing what to do. And I get it. Spending, however long with a fake family may not be the same thing, but he's at least experienced to some degree what it's like to have offspring. And so it felt really weird, especially in the finale when he's like, I'm gonna be a father first because I'm totally never done that before. And so now I'm opening up my heart to my son. And I'm like, but you kind of did that, and you did it with Jason Vigo, and you did it with Wesley, you did it with Riker. Like, I can talk about all the people that Picard raised, but in particular, he had babies in the Nexus.
Right. Like, it was kind of a theme in TNG, especially in the early days, that Picard was awkward around children in particular. Like when there was Picard Day and there was that whole episode, the part of the source of conflict was Picard's discomfort around, children. And it's like, I don't know what to do around them. I don't know how to relate. But that's a different thing than being a father. Most people don't know what kind of parent they're going to be until they are. And Beverly didn't even let him figure that out.
Well, it's not like she's in any position to judge good parenting. I mean, seriously.
All right. Unless anybody has anything they really seriously want to talk about within this episode, let's rank this and then move on to talking about the entire series as a whole.
Jack being ensign. I'm sorry. That's just weird.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. He made a big point of being sort of emptily I don't want to be in Starfleet, and sort of arbitrarily changing his mind, I guess, because of the outcome of the finale or whatever. There's not a huge bridge connecting these two things to me.
You only had an hour for this movie.
Starfleet, the original collective, it assimilates you whether you want to or not.
Does anybody do other things besides Starfleet if they have family in Starfleet? Or that's everybody? Everybody except for Jake. Everybody.
It depends on how good the show is, I guess.
Cisco was actually oddly okay with Jake not joining Fleet. Like he, out of all the parents whose kids chose not to join fleet, like Wesley chose not to and stuff. After, well, Wesley left. I mean, Cisco was oddly okay with it, if I recall. Like you'd have to expect him to be like the rest. Like, how dare you not join Starfleet? And he was just kind of like, okay.
I just watched that episode.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
he like really had ever thought or assumed that he would want to be in Starfleet because he literally lost his wife to as a result of that. So it's like, of course he wants to do something else.
It's
I mean,
literally
time too.
it's literally I mean, he's taken aback when Jake first says he doesn't want to do Starfleet, but then the exchange is like, you never said anything about this. And then Jake explains, he's like, okay, like, do what you want to do. That is the scene.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that I think Jack being an ensign, if I'm a writer on the show, which means if I use ChatGPT, the one thing I got out of it when I had I'm letting myself have emotions about the show was more about his bond with Seven of Nine than it was about his bond with either Beverly or Picard. This was about, like, maybe not even going to Starfleet so he can serve with Seven of Nine, but I think because she's more of a rogue than any of the other captains we've seen, I think that's what attracts Jack to wanting to serve with Seven of Nine. That was my thought when I was having my I'm not picking this apart watch.
There's one other factor that could have influenced that decision. Hormones, because he really wanted to bang Sydney.
Mm.
I mean, he was like tripping all over himself with Sydney, so there could be that too.
He's like an Archie character. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, Sydney.
Yeah, as Norman's pointing out here, I got the sense that some definite time had passed, like maybe even 4 years. Because
1 year,
Jack, when
it
he's
says.
talking, well, he does here. I'm just wondering. I got the sense when I watched it that maybe it had been a full 4 years, and he'd been to the academy now. Because he talks to Q as if now he has a great deal more understanding of his father. Because he's like, oh, my father told me all about you. Like they'd been spending a lot of time and working on it over years, but I'm not sure where that officially ends up. I'm sure there's a tweet from Terry Metalis somewhere.
It looks like they said the title card said 1 year.
Yeah.
Had passed.
Oh,
and
I
in
missed
that
that.
1 year, he graduated Starfleet Academy and got to be an ensign on the Enterprise. And like, there was even a line in there like, "Oh, I got in here because of nepotism." And Picard's like, "No, you just worked really hard over a year."
He was beating ass. Let me tell you, every 5 minutes he got something accomplished.
To play devil's advocate, like a significant part of Starfleet is now dead, and the surviving part is traumatized. So
Yeah.
I think they might be trying to boost their numbers a little bit.
That's a good point.
There's
It's
another
still
thing
quick.
that
Go
there-
ahead.
Oh, it was just something along what Dustin was saying about like him knowing when he says, oh, my father told me all about you and stuff. They don't necessarily have had to spend time together because in the collective, once you're jacked into the Borg, you share all the knowledge and everything anyway. So he could have found out from that part.
Yeah, I suppose. All right, let's move on and let's rank this episode and then move on to Picard as a whole. Let's start with Vanessa.
I think this is as good as an ending was going to get with what we had. I think we lucked out that we got, as Del pointed out, a pretty good TNG finale. But as far as like ending this series, not so much. I'm giving it a 5.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Like, I have like the emotional attachment nostalgia bunny rating, and I have I'm trying to make logic out of any of this rating. So like emotionally, it was an 8, maybe even a 9. Like when I allowed myself to just be present with it and not think about all the different things, it was a very good episode. But as soon as I tried to apply logic to just about anything, it unraveled. So on the logical side, I'm giving it like a 4. But the emotional like stuff was definitely like a 9.
So where would you come in between there for a final number?
Nowhere. I'm separate.
It's nowhere.
No, if I had to average it, I would give it like a 7. I want it to be higher, but yeah, I guess it's a 7.
That's fair.
I'm trying to split it in my head, but to me, everything that was like satisfying emotionally about the characters and everything else, what makes this kind of a good resolution for the TNG characters is from the previous 9 episodes. I don't think there's really anything in this episode for that. The plot isn't very good to me, so I feel like I'm probably even going to go so low as to like a 3, just as well from its own quality, and then just failing to kind of do anything with the previous 9 episodes. It's not just a bad finale, it's a bad finale that has nothing to do with the rest of the show.
Fair.
Before I give mine, I'm going to read Norman's, because Norman's clocked in at a 7 of 10. He said character parts was good, but the plot, sigh, way too pat, especially the resolution for the rogue changeling faction. For me, I'm giving it a 5 because I don't love it. I don't hate it. I really don't know what to do with it, to be honest. It's like what Nathan was saying. It's kind of like it's disconnected from the rest of the other 9 episodes. But on the other hand, there is the nostalgia thing, like the poker table and everything else. But I mean, yeah, I'm dead in the middle. I can't say either or. It's weird. It's a weird episode. I don't know what to do with it.
I'm sorry, can I change my ranking? Because I've just remembered that this episode is not called ... must come to an end, and that takes away the final 3 points. It's a 0 out of 10.
Wow.
Wow.
Seriously? In all reality?
Let's give it a 1.
Okay.
I'm very upset about that. I'm very upset.
I can tell.
Eve, what did you give it? Hold on.
5.
5? Okay.
Okay. There are things about all this I want to like, but of course there's so much like story issue stuff going on, and this basically did exactly what I thought it was going to do. It had about 3 big battle set pieces, and you get like a nice little tiny emotional wrap up with Jack and Picard. And I actually want to go about a 7, but I don't think it deserves more than a 6, because in actuality, those moments, despite how well acted they are, beyond all reasonably well acted for like how corny this is. This feels like it almost feels like bad Ghost in the Shell or something. Like we're gonna bring Jack out of this horrible matrix, and he's gonna bond with his humanity. And I just feel like this season finale is so cut off from the rest of the season that it doesn't even need the rest of the season. We could have had half of this season and gotten to this point. Like, there was no emotional storytelling pushing us to this point other than the fact that they didn't want the universe to die. And that's what also gives it book vibes to me. What also gives it like lower tier book vibes to me. It feels like the type of action movie beats you see in other things that Star Trek should probably be above by now. Like, if we were getting these made by people that were really caring about the franchise, I think it would be. But I also think, like, we also have all these other things from Picard beforehand that make it a bad Picard finale. And I think as a TNG finale, it kind of ranks a little hollow. It is more about conjuring up the iconography of what TNG is than it is about actually showing the legacy that TNG had when it got good and how it branched out the Star Trek universe, how we had characters that were more humane and more interesting than we had in previous iterations. And these characters are doing like plot beat acting. They're saying quippy things that make things move along. You mentioned in the chat, Dustin, that we had a 45-minute outtake that made up the giant poker scene.
Oh my
What?
gosh.
They had time to just let people sit around and have a big game of poker and then edit it for a montage, but they couldn't use that to come up with a more interesting way to send these people off that would give us closure as an audience. It's that type of like loose storytelling that's really dragging this season down. I think I had to stick right S6 for it.
Good timing coming back, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. For wrapping up some of the plot threads and the nostalgia everybody kind of expected. The thing about that is everybody's talking about how much, there's like too much nostalgia in the whole thing. Like they said from the beginning, this season was basically going to be a goodbye to TNG. So what do you expect? Like how much nostalgia is too much? Because I don't think they quite push it over the edge yet. Maybe, bringing the Borg back through all 3 seasons was too much. Sure. So as far as that goes, I would say 9. But given that there were many plot threads left dangling and pacing issues and I don't know, I'm sure there's other stuff there, I would probably drop it down to a 6.
Yeah, I am also going to go a 6 on this one. We already had a wrap up to TNG. It was called All Good Things. And I watched it the same day that this came out, and I compared the two, and there's just no contest. Even though this one has better action sequences, the things that I like about this one are the little things, like Data coming out of his counseling session going, I'm okay. I really liked that moment. There were a couple moments, especially with Data, like everything about Data, M510, whatever you want to call him, was really good. I like the little things with Worf. And that's pretty much it. I haven't from episode 1 been here for the father-son dynamic between Picard and Jack. They didn't tie a lot of things up with the Borg Queen and Vadic and their connection together. That wasn't cemented well. Yeah. This is a solid 6. It's watchable TV. It's fun. But as a finale, it's only better than Turnabout Intruder and These Are the Voyages for me. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Oh, Scott, did you get rid of the ticker?
Yeah, that was my mistake.
Oh, because Oh, did I get your 6? I don't remember. I was like adding up here. I don't even know what was what.
Mine was a 6.
I wasn't expecting to be the lowest.
Mine was a 6.
So, wait, let's see.
6,
Congratulations,
6,
6 squared.
I'm the only one below a 5.
Vanessa, what did you go?
A 5. A 5. Like I just I feel like that usually, like I think I mentioned this before, but it's like the moral sort of arc of like the consequences of our actions haven't really, there's no lesson to be learned from the things that they did. They just were like, well, the bad guys are, done for, so we're good.
And Del, you won a 7?
Yeah.
And Eve won a 5.
It's
okay.
the first time I've gone higher than anybody else.
All right, I think I've got all these. Let me redo the average. Oh, I didn't get Nathan's in there.
Yeah, Nathan's gonna drag us down.
All right.
What?
You can put it at 2 to be a bit more fair, but it's definitely losing
all
1
right.
point. It's losing 1
Somewhere between
point
a 1
for the
and a 4.
title. It's losing a point for the title, 100%.
So while I average this out, the first question I will toss out there for you guys to banter around is, let's go back to 7 and Rafi. Oh, no. Okay. Del's going to pee himself. What do you got?
Okay, so Robbie and you inspired me to write this note down. I think the ending would have been so much better if instead of Q, it was a changeling. I would be all about on the edge of my seat waiting for something to happen if it was a changeling. Cool. But Q did not excite me at all. And so maybe that would have given us just a taste of resolution by saying it's not resolved and we're telling you it's not resolved, rather than just letting it happen off screen somewhere. Anyway, that was my thing.
I was going to say, the first thing, let's go back to 7 and Rafi as a couple across the series.
Sure. I mean, if you want to call it across the series, like briefly referenced at the very end of season 1, not really fleshed out or anything in season 2, and then season 3 they spent basically the whole time apart. Sure, they're a couple of something.
A couple in between the seasons.
Women.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I didn't know coming out of season 2 how I felt, whether or not it was just queer baiting or whether it was a poignant relationship, since they didn't really have anything meaningful to do as characters in season 2. But what I really liked was this lived-in old married couple feel that they had. And I was like, okay, well, this might be enough. But going into season 3, we literally don't touch on them other than Rafi saying something that could have just been using something as her for her undercover work. We still didn't know whether they were together. It doesn't seem to be.
It just doesn't matter in this season. Their relationship doesn't matter. Like, it only matters like towards the very end because they're like on the the G, together. But throughout, it's just, you know, to rein in a certain demographic to get them excited, because I definitely was like jazzed about the idea of there being like a queer relationship that isn't you know, 2 men, and that never got fleshed out, because it's like, and honestly, like towards the beginning of the season they even had like a sort of stereotypical woman caricature in Deanna. Like, they showed Deanna just briefly to like nag Riker. So it's like, maybe they're, you know, a little lost as to how to flesh this out.
I think it's really interesting because it's a kind of a joke in lesbian society that how does a lesbian celebrate their second date? They show up with a U-Haul.
Oh my gosh.
It's true. It's the stereotype exists for a reason. And so, not that I think they did this much research, because I know they didn't. But what I liked about the live-in feeling and not feeling like it happened too fast was because lesbians just tend to fall into each other's lives quicker than any other people I've ever seen. Yeah, exactly, Norman. But what I did like was we saw I don't want to say desexualizing, but like less emphasis on Seven as a sex object and more emphasis on her at like a person with personality and character and meaning and worth. And I find it interesting that when she gets into that space is when she starts having a relationship with Rafi. It mirrors a lot of queer experience of like trying to do straight dating and it doesn't work out, but you keep doing it because you think that's what you're supposed to do until one day you wake up and you go, oh, never mind. But you've dated a bunch of guys or a bunch of girls in the meantime, you know? And so I think it kind of fits that narrative of 7 of 9 is more than just, you know, having to wear a corset underneath a cat suit.
Right. There's no more male gaze in factoring in, at least on the surface.
Right.
Like I maybe Chakotay was the last straw. Maybe it was him.
You can only hope.
I love that theory.
Hey, Vanessa, don't you worry. There's someone out there ready to bring the male gaze back to Star Trek, damn it. Yeah, they were trying this season, but they missed.
Like, even the way that Seven dresses, even the way that they present them is not geared towards that any longer. Or maybe it just seems like that because it's less catsuit with corset underneath.
I just speaking as like a dumb, fairly halfway straight guy most of the time, I really think like the relationship feels okay on a certain level because we do have like moments of empathy between the two of them, and we see them be there for each other when we do get those little moments. Like, I don't think it's like harmful in the way other portrayals of such people could be. Yeah, like I don't think it's that awful, like on a contextual level.
I guess there's just a lot missing from the growth of this relationship. It just wasn't really focused on. And I'm not saying like they had to like march into Picard's office and like come out together and like make that the whole conflict of the episode or something. But like there wasn't a lot of I think Discovery does this too, where Michael Burnham and her partner are sort of like developing the relationship off camera. So they just come together as like a couple, like the season later is like, could there be a story here? Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot to say, and there's a lot to think about, and there's no right or wrong answer because there's a lot of nuance here. It's like Robbie said, it's not as bad and egregious as what some other shows have done. But it could have been more. They could have done this way better.
Yeah.
So, which is the more egregious underuse of a character, Elnor or Laris?
Laris, because I don't think the mistake with Elnor is that he's underused. It's that he shouldn't have really been a character after his first episode. Because his first episode,
That's fair.
Absolute Candor, I've said this a lot. He's good in it, but he also serves his purpose. And like, isn't it the very next episode of Picard, they get rid of him. And then when he comes back, he like cries into Seven's arms and that doesn't really do anything. In season 2, they basically kill him off the first chance they get because they don't have anything to do with him. And now in season 3, does he show up at all? Like, I'm sure you could have a character like that that'd be interesting and fun to watch, but he just doesn't have anything to do, and they really shouldn't have kept him around since his first episode.
I could also include Maddox, Hugh, Ensign Rowe, or whatever position she's in. They just sort of like, they just use these sort of ancillary characters as plot devices to sort of like keep the A plot going rather than like flesh them out as actual people.
Oh, I was going to get to that as a separate topic about what you think. And since it seems pretty thin on this one, let's just go to that. What do you think about the constant misuse in my mind of bringing characters back that we liked just to kill them? And it's just an easy trope that you see coming now with Picard. Every time they brought somebody back this season, I was like, shit, they're going to die. And every single time, it didn't disappoint.
Except Tuvok.
Well, every non-main character, this was something we had talked about on the show a couple weeks ago. Every non-main character they bring back, he's going to die. Game of Thrones City.
It was just really funny to me on the episode when Ensign Rowe came back, where they're just like fleshing out this very strange dichotomy of like Picard completely not understanding the Maquis cause, and then they make peace with each other on a very strange emotional foundation, only just in time for her to go in a ship for no reason and explode when she didn't have to. It was so
all right, Clary, time to die.
The whole Roe thing was just super weird. Like half because I probably haven't seen Ro Laren in an episode in like 3 or 4 years, so my memory's foggy. And the other half, like, why is she here in the first place? Why, like, the reason the changelings ultimately lose is because they sent Ro Laren to meet Picard, someone who they suspected of, like, basically suspecting them, and to the point where they were going to kill her that mission anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Bad pulp writing is what this season is all about. Just like characters that have no distinction in their actions. Like the whole Roe thing about how she's sent there because they know he's gonna like talk to her or something. It felt so terribly played out, and I thought the acting performance is good, but I also felt like this could have been something entirely better with more time.
I just wish we got more of Yar besides like an evaporating hologram. Like,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Denise Crosby said she would have come back if she'd been asked, and supposedly Terry Metalis reached out to like everybody that was ever in Trek. But it also depends on like how much she wanted, and there's there's always a million other reasons. Yeah.
like I like going back to Lyris, sorry. But I just think it's really funny to like think of her just sort of like sitting there in the vineyard just twiddling her thumbs. Like, I wonder if he's gonna come back. Just this whole time. Just not like, yeah, she's like very nakedly an emotional anchor for Picard rather than a human being, or a rounded out being herself.
Yeah, well, the question I had asked was, a few ago, which was more egregious. I think Elnor is the more egregious underuse because he's at least a main. The character was a main titled character. Lyris wasn't, but we actually like her more, and they keep bringing her back and giving me a reason to want to care about Lyris, but they're not doing any goddamn thing with Lyris.
Right. So much so that they even had to bring in pseudo Lyris.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Lyris's biggest moment isn't even as Lyris, because in season 2 it's a new character.
Right.
I personally just have no investment in Lyris because they just never show her as a character that isn't related to Jean-Luc. I definitely think she has potential as a character. I'm sure she probably has a fascinating history that we'll never see. And we never really see her history with Jean-Luc either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're probably never going to. I mean, even if they bring this legacy show back, Picard's not, Jean-Luc, Patrick Stewart's never going to come back and act in this again. That was it. We got our end to Picard there.
Lyris isn't part of Starfleet, so we can't work her into the new legacy show.
That's right.
Not easily either, yeah.
Yeah.
She's just going to be flipping on Tinder or whatever they have.
Another 109-year-old cyborg.
So what do we think about the possibility of Star Trek Legacy? What are you excited for it?
I'm sure it'll be fine. I bet it'll be fine like the season is fine.
I kept saying, why don't they call it Star Trek Titan? And then, of course, they had to go and rename the ship.
Well, they can't call it Star Trek Enterprise.
Nope.
It's been way too long of a road for that.
I think I'm worried that if they make Legacy, it'll just carry over everything that didn't work with Picard, because it's a group of most of the characters I didn't like.
Nepo Babies, the series.
Well, I was gonna say, with all the interpersonal drama and stuff they've been writing into Star Trek lately, I could almost see it, instead of calling it like Star Trek whatever, it would just be the G.
Star Trek the G.
Yes.
Not it. Drop the Star Trek. Make the same mistake Enterprise made. Just call it the G.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta say,
go ahead.
I'm not really here for it. I don't think we need it. Even though now Terry has set this up so that spending that last 20 minutes of this past episode so that if we don't get it, we're going to feel cheated and we don't get all the answers, like what Seven's warp call sign is, or why Q has come back. I mean, is this even like Q from after those events, or was this a slightly younger Q because he's omnipotent? There's so many questions to be left open, to be answered. And I would almost be here for it if two things. Shaw wasn't dead, and I know there's already been tweets about how we're going to bring him back. Great, I don't care. You shouldn't have killed him. And Terry Matalas is not the showrunner.
The thing about captains dying, as you remember, is that their bodies tend to end up in places like freezers on a station that can just be jacked to life, like it's just so silly. So somebody being dead doesn't mean a darn thing.
True.
I'm really hoping this isn't the tone of Star Trek going forward throughout the rest of the other series. Like, I have hope for Lower Decks. I have hope for Strange New Worlds. I'm not as excited for the Michelle Yeoh movie, though I think it will have cool stuff in it one way or the other. But I really just hope we're not going to keep delving into these super like pulpy things that don't necessarily give us character momentum the way good Star Trek usually does.
I'd actually add some of my viewers and comments win me over a bit more to the idea of legacy. In some of the later episodes, I was like, maybe a show with like Jack in 7, it could work with the right writers, the right kind of direction. But then this last scene where we see Rafi 7 and Jack, just kind of that banter and how they acted, that I think would be at the core of a legacy show. I'm like, no. I don't want this now. I actively don't want this now.
Like they're trying to make them the new like Kirk, Spock, and Bones type of vibe. Or I do want to see
Kirk and Kirk.
Yeah, I do want to see 7 as a captain. I do want that. I think her journey getting there is completely ridiculous because, as I mentioned before, she stole a ship while Captain was moving against his wishes. So that's like, not good and not indicative of somebody that can take commands very well. So you give them more responsibility. Whereas like Michael Burnham instigated a Klingon war and then she gets thrown in the clink. Like it's just sense of justice in this iteration of Trek is a little biased, maybe.
If it's gonna be legacy though, let's make it more like a legacy show though. Focus on everybody, like flesh out the lower characters. I personally would love to know what's going on with Mira and Esmer. Give them a chief engineer and a doctor. Just give it a full crew. See what happens.
I want to know what's going on with that cook.
Oh my gosh, the cook.
Does he go back to being a cook?
Why is there a cook on the table?
His passion is inspired. Pilot now.
You gotta have a guy to push those buttons 5 times, all right?
Oh,
that's why he's there.
I never even considered that.
Why is there
I didn't
a
at
cook?
first either.
I don't get it. It hurts my head.
Granted,
Shaw
we don't hear
really
about them.
liked authentic food. Maybe that's why.
Yeah,
My thought was that he programs the replicator. It's the only thing that I could come up with that makes me feel okay about it.
Granted, it's only in the first
through the replicator
season, but we hear about in TNG that there is a cook on board.
Yeah.
So.
But still, it just seems weird.
And I know that like canon and regarding it isn't really like this thing's forte, but maybe like there's always been a sort of in-world comparison between like replicated food and non-replicated food. So maybe like non-replicated food is more of a luxury item, but again, like practically speaking, having a cook on board doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
He's for the admirals and the people up top, the regular suits. They don't get that good home cooking.
Get that blue steak.
Did he actually say he was the ship's cook, or maybe he just happened to like Cisco?
No, he said he's the cook. I'm just the cook.
What, like, was the blue steak like Andorian? Like, what is he?
I make what he tells me. That's all I know. He wanted blue steak. I gave him blue steak.
Wasn't blue milk a Babylon 5 thing?
Star Wars thing.
Star Wars.
Okay.
I bet that thing is like the
Oh my
Clockwork
gosh,
Orange
blue milk from blue cows that also make blue
Star
steak.
Wars.
I had two little things that I wrote down that kind of flew by. But first of all, Jack and Seven sounds like something I would order at a bar. And if they're gonna have to bring the Q into anything ever again, call them Quinn and fuck it everyone's brains up. If this Q that we know, John Delancey, can come back and be like, oh, time's not linear, then why can't we get Quinn as an episode? And that would be so awesome to me. The idea that we're really proving that even in death, the Q continue to exist in some way.
You're telling me that the Q can't climb the Black Mountain?
No.
It's their greatest regret.
No. But I hear rumor that Shaw bought some equipment, rock climbing equipment, not too long ago.
So I had cut a thing, and I should have done this when our talk about just the final episode here in general. Here's a quick clip of how I felt at the end of this past episode.
Get out of here, Q! No, we are done with random stuff today. We're not dealing with any of your Q bullshit.
Did anybody else feel like that at the end? Like,
Yes.
I was so glad to hear that Q was still alive, but also like, what the fuck?
Why, man?
It felt like, I mean, again, using the changelings as a red herring this season, like, it's like they were digging in the back and going, okay, what, like, antagonists that were tied to TNG in some way? Okay, Borg. But that's not enough. So let's make it changelings and Borg. But that's not enough. So let's make it changelings, Borg, weird DNA. No, not enough. Changelings, Borg, weird DNA. Worf is now peaceable. Like, it just keeps kind of going down this ladder until finally you're just like, this isn't a reunion. They're all vastly different than they used to be, and they're not acting the way that they used to be. And that's a good way to show like character and age and all that sort of stuff. In 2 weeks, I'm doing a show on aging in Trek, which I'm going to have some Picard material in. But I don't know. It was weird. It was so weird.
I mean, episode 9's sort of like science-y scene where they're all in front of like this displays talking about the conveniences of not being able to like see a sequence of DNA for 35 years. It's specifically that amount of time, and like how like that became a weapon, and the transponder receiver thing. It was so sinuously, stringily connected. They knew that this was like a really sharp, pivotal plot thing that they were doing by dumping one enemy and sticking on another at the very end to like make it a thing. So it was interesting. And also that whole like 35 years line at the end was about like when TNG started airing, which I thought was a nice detail.
The Aromatic syndrome, being mistaken for it, just feels like so convenient. Like that feels like a writer saying like, well, we got 5 days to get this out. What's wrong with Picard? Oh, he's got Aromatic syndrome. Let's change it to this. And it feels really bad if you're going to use this as a cap for 2 series, basically, because you're not only ending one series, you're doing a big homage that's supposed to end another series for people. And to just be told that there was 35 years of a computer mistake, the guy was just like, oh, I guess I didn't read the chart right. I'm sorry. You know?
You forgot to read the terms of service.
Gotta read your TOS.
It feels so cheap. This whole season feels so cheap on a writing level in that manner.
Exactly. Like season 1 was all about him dying of Aromatic syndrome and like saying goodbye to Picard, and that whole thing just got ripped right out from under us. Like that didn't matter. Like, oh, great.
I have a very serious issue across the entire series on how they deal with genetic disorders and how people react to them. So I get to be the disability advocate for a second here. I have a genetic disorder. It took a very long time for me to figure it out. I had to go through intensive testing. I had to go to the NIH down in Washington, D.C., because they specialize in rare genetic disorders. And
Okay.
I do get the idea that if someone told me I had Irritonic syndrome, I would be concerned. But I would also investigate this so I knew it backward, forward, in my sleep, in a suit of armor, so that if something happens outside of that realm, like all of a sudden it connects me to Borg, I can recognize that symptom and go to a doctor and say, these symptoms are because of my genetic disorder, this is not. And so the idea that Picard just gives up. He just goes, oh, I have Irritonic syndrome. Oh, well. And it doesn't show, I mean, that's a supposition and a stereotype that disabled people get all the time, is we just accept what we are and we never try to change or fix or do anything better. Whereas a lot of disabled people are in, intensive PT or whatever. And it really bothered me that, like, it was a certain death thing until it wasn't, and then it became a superpower in a way. Like, that bothered me. The end.
And like his body was just like, they just went yoink. Like he wasn't buried in a vineyard. He had no bodily autonomy. And it sort of like brings up an ethical question. Like they sort of retcon Measure of a Man by boosting up Data again. It's because he's not technically Starfleet property. So what is a captain after they die? So of course, because it's this version of Trek in this universe, they're never going to talk about that. It's just an evil scientist lab, and that's it.
That's like a step backwards. I'm pretty sure that's a step backwards, because I'm pretty sure in this day and age there are laws that say you can't do things with dead bodies.
This season of Picard plays by some anime rules. Let me tell you something.
What do you mean by that? Flesh that out.
Well, I think like in anime, you get a lot of these like big boasting villains who have mysterious plans, but then the plans are always like he's going to kill everybody, or they're gonna assimilate everyone, and there's a lot of like tentacles and like color coding for different things. I really feel like they were just leaning in on so many different tropes. They weren't even being specific about the tropes they wanted to lean in on. And I can make all these comparisons to other media because they're not only like specifically trying to have fun like that, they just don't know exactly how they're having fun almost. Like this is a confounding season to end what should have been one of the biggest runs and one of the most important runs in all of Star Trek history, and it feels like a bit of a flop.
I love season 2.
I was just going to ask, so what is everybody's favorite season of Picard?
Season 2.
Season 2. It actually has...
I don't care how bad it is.
It's 3 for me, but I'm actually very amazed to hear so many season 2s.
Yeah, I'm going to go season 1. I see Vanessa.
It's definitely season 1 for me because it like showed Picard at odds with what Starfleet was becoming, which was a militaristic organization, which was not really the point of this Starfleet. So like there's that, and also the lore with Romulans, like we get to learn more about their culture, even though it's from these ridiculously villainy, mustache twisty villains that are sort of zesty, like that whole thing.
Anime, incest, anime. Let me tell you.
Like there was that, and also like seeing Data's death redone really solidified season 1 as like my favorite. Season 2 was kind of all over the place, and season 3 is just. I know it has no point.
A shit show of nostalgia.
Yeah. I'll still take
emphasis on the shit.
I mean, with the resolution of season 3 being so bad now, it might be on par with season 1 for me. But I also haven't seen season 1 in a long time, so it's harder for me to be more critical about it.
I do have to say, I haven't watched season 1 since I did an initial rewatch about 5 months ago, and I watched a little bit of season 2 to kind of come into this. And I would say I think the character dynamics in season 2 between everybody feels a little bit better. Like we have some camaraderie in there that the first season doesn't have. The first season has a lot of people like talking to Picard like he's a crazy old man that no one wants to deal with. Like, we're not going to get you out of trouble, old man. Like, there is so much of that.
I loved the Borgatti plotline like you wouldn't believe, and I didn't think so when it started. I was like, this is terrible. But the more it developed, the more complexities I was able to pick apart in my brain and kind of think about, like what the dynamic is there. And I was really curious to see in the end who would sort of be the dominant personality, if there was going to be one. But it was kind of, in its own weird way, a love affair in a really like sort of cyberpunk way, I guess. But it felt like more of a romantic relationship than Picard had with Not Laris, that Rios had with Maria, I think her name was. Like that was the love story, was Borgatti. And I think a lot of people don't see it that way. And that's why season 2 is my favorite.
I mean, that helps me appreciate it a bit more, honestly, because that contextualizes a lot of their dialogue in a different framework. And because they if only they focused more on that and Q's death, like I think they would have been much better, but they just sort of like splintered off in so many directions. And Rios is just like, I don't really care if what I do affects the future. And that
was the whole thing, man. Talking about, you've traveled back in time, you can't really affect the future. Okay, well, we'll do some high-speed police chases, we'll spring people off a prison bus, we'll have a Borg Queen running around causing mayhem.
I pretend that whole integration thing didn't happen.
I, for one, applaud Rios's bravery and his Doc Brown-like willingness to throw away the laws of time and space.
Yeah, season 3 can't be a favorite of mine because it did not contain Rios, my favorite character. And we knew he wasn't going to come back, but it bothered me that we didn't even get a Rios hologram in La Sirena. I was glad to see La Sirena back in the end, though, because that was another thing. I was like, all right, if we don't see Rios, gonna be pissed. If we don't see La Sirena, gonna be pissed. We got one of those things.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm still taking 3 on account of the nostalgia.
I don't know if you guys discussed this when I was missing, but did you guys talk about the row thing?
Yeah, a little bit.
We had a conversation about
I just wanted to make sure that it got talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have something to say on it?
Ro is not, I don't have as deep a relationship with Ro that some people do. I don't think she's that attractive, but I have weird tastes. But I think it was messed up. That's my opinion. It was messed up to bring back a character that has so much fandom attached to it and then just immediately kill them off. Like, it just seems rude. I mean, they even brought Tim Russ back to do Tuvok at least twice, and it just seemed like a too short a goodbye. Like, they rushed everything that they had, like, in conflict with each other, and then she goes off and kills herself.
And like in Picard season 1, I felt like they did the same thing with Hugh. Like they did the same thing where it's like they just got rid of them in this really dramatic way. And it's like they're really, really dead. They're definitely not coming back kind of way. And it's just egregious and very clear that they just wrote this character to just serve this one purpose and then immediately just die.
Yeah. We have just a couple of minutes left. Let's talk about who is the most egregious death across the run of Picard. I'm going to go with Icheb.
Icheb.
Yeah, I think Icheb.
Yeah.
I'm not bringing their names to mind, so don't hate me. The twins in season 1.
Soji and Dash.
Yes, thank you. I knew Soji, but I couldn't think of the other one. But both of them,
Yeah.
I'm still not over it.
I wasn't sure if you were talking about Narissa and Narek for a minute. Which
Oh,
we
no,
still
no,
have
no, but
no clue where Narek is. More plotline, never tied up like Laris.
He got
We just
hired
don't.
by
We don't
Amway.
We don't tie up Romulan plot lines. They don't really exist. They only count as like 3/5 of a person or something.
More bias in the writer's room. More bias.
As long as
in
we
the
don't have to
writer's
send
room.
them mules, we'll be okay.
Well, I mean, essentially, Laris and was it Javon? What I can't remember his.
Javon.
No, you're right.
Yeah, they're basically his indentured servants.
Yeah.
That's the weird implication of the whole thing with like Picard being there's like, why are they there as servants? Why can't they just live there? You know, like they have to serve with him. Like, why? And they sort of like try to invert that with the Picard season 2 being like this authoritarian person. There's no contract.
Without money, isn't everyone kind of like an indentured servant, but they can leave? Like, do we ever see any indication that Lairs and stuff can't just leave if they wanted to? Like, I get the impression they're there and working because they want to be there and they want to work.
Right,
They like breaking their back.
And they're just kind of under Picard's protection because they're former Tal Shiar, which the Tal Shiar probably aren't going to come to Earth to get them.
I'm just going to say the happy servant stereotype serves a purpose, and I'm just going to leave it there. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, again,
That's fair.
season 1's a bit fuzzy in my mind.
All right. Before we get out of here, does anybody else have anything they specifically would like to touch on across any bit of Picard?
I think it says something that we're all silent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a show.
It's over,
I don't
man. It's
hate
over.
it, but I don't love it either.
It feels like it was something to
How
do.
would you rank it amongst all the series?
That's really complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
It
my bread
does.
and butter. That's what my channel talks about. I rank every episode, and I'm actually dreading season 2 and season 3. Because some of the episodes, they have these amazing moments, but it's otherwise wrapped in an episode that I don't give a shit about. So it's really difficult. Versus the other series, I mean, it's better than like TOS, it's better than your early TNG, but is it better than the whole run of Voyager and DS9 and even Discovery? No.
No. Don't you
Hey,
lie
I
yourself,
can't.
Dustin.
I can't mix in the classics, but it's definitely not as good as the animated ones.
Including TAS?
Well,
It's better than
that's
TAS
classic.
for me.
Oh,
TAS
I'm a
is
huge
weird, but-
TAS fan, so I was hoping for a moment.
I would probably put this like right above Enterprise. I think I like every other Star Trek series that came before this just about better, and I even like Discovery better, and I haven't finished all of that. I just really don't see the purpose of the whole 3 seasons of this existing the way it does, because it leaves Picard as an enigma while also trying to solve the problems his character has, but it doesn't try to solve all those problems. It openly leaves some of those problems just in the dust, and it doesn't matter. Like, those people who were part of Picard's life never mattered, and that's the most frustrating thing about the series as a whole.
Like they sort of touch on generational trauma, just a touch. They touch on sort of like mental illness going through the generations a little bit, but it's just sort of like, just be brave and that's it. Just beat the bad guy. It's so like philosophically hollow. Like they sort of touch on themes and don't really explore them. So I'm not sure I don't know how I would rank it. I would put it like above Discovery, but not too high up above anything else for me.
Wow. Okay.
My problem is, season 2 of Picard is so much different than 1 and 3, and when I try and rank it compared to Discovery, Discovery's first 2 seasons are so much different to the others. I feel like I need to split Picard into 3 seasons and split Discovery in order to actually rank them.
But at least all of Discovery feels like Star Trek. Like sometimes Picard goes so far off book, it doesn't even necessarily feel like Star Trek.
I would say the same. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask a question.
Please.
Do you know Picard better now? Because on this show called Star Trek Picard, and the fact that it was sold to us as a way to dive deeper into this specific character, do you think you know him better?
I know things about Picard better, like his childhood, but I don't know the character better. I knew the character very well after TNG.
Yeah, season 2, big character building for Picard. I do know him better because of it. His sense of just being kind of a block of wood asshole for the first 3 seasons of TNG makes so much more sense once you find out about his mom.
Yeah.
True.
But it's like the mom, that whole arc was really strange because it's like they're Federation citizens, so presumably there's a better infrastructure of like mental health services available. So to just throw her in a hole because she's a little too much is just really stretching it. Like it's giving very Edgar Allan Poe kind of thing. Like they made it this Victorian sort of like, she's in white and she's just secluded away rather than like dealing with mental illness in a very like proactive way. Like would you if you broke your arm, would you just go, well, that stinks, let's just throw you in a hole, you know?
Right.
The fairy tale implications of it all too just feel so juvenile and silly and on a storytelling level. Like, come on, you want me to learn how all this unfolds this like fairy tale book way? Like you couldn't just show me his mother acting like this and then the father doing it. You have to like repeat it almost 2 or 3 times within the context of this fairy tale book. Like that feels like disturbingly emotional in a way that feels personal for some writer or something. Like it's really strange.
I think it did a good job, though, of illustrating that a mentally ill person has to want to change before they can seek out help. You can't just pick someone up and plop them in a therapist office and expect it to work. The person has to voluntarily make that move. And I think some of what we saw in season 2 was someone so afraid of their own mental illness that they won't reach out and get help.
That's a good point.
I think my main problem with that story in season 2 was there were maybe like a good dozen sort of points of failure that had to lead to the mother committing suicide. And for all like dozen of those things to fail, it doesn't really fit with the society that should have been there in early TNG. And so like a few of them could have been there, like the mother not wanting to seek treatment. But the only reason it didn't really work for me is the time period. If it was set 300 years earlier, I'd been like, yeah, this is a pretty good story.
I kind of liked the difference between analog and like digital. The idea that the winery, the vineyard, always stood for the slowness of analog, and the idea that it's not a very technological place to be. You don't see replicators or yes, please, thank you. But I think that was something that I found very poignant about season 2 that I very much liked. With looking at what they set in the analog universe and what they set in the technological universe.
And I'll say that was definitely, I think, the best plot line of that season, the mental health one.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we've been here for hours. Before we get out of here, we've got 8 weeks before Strange New Worlds premieres. So each one of us is going to tackle a topic. I just want to go around and everybody that has an idea for what they want to do, just give a few sentences about what you want to do as a host, as a topic. Nathan here joined us this week to get a feel for whether or not they enjoy talking with us, because we're going to do Spock's brain next week and find out, is it that bad? That's my topic. Go ahead. What are you thinking,
we're
Vanessa?
gonna prove it's good.
All right, that's some bold words, my friend. Vanessa, what are you thinking?
I'd rather it be more like a collaboration than just me leading the conversation. But I would like to talk about the Outcast, and what that means now and how it was framed then, because those two things do not meet. They did not intend for it to have a gender-oriented message at all. So I'm really fascinated by it, and that was like the first thing that I watched of TNG. So
awesome. Del, what are you looking to accomplish in a couple weeks?
So a while back, I put together an outline for an aging in Trek. As someone who's approaching a large number of years, I've noticed more and more about how not just old people, but the idea of the aging process in Trek is a very interesting topic to me. So that will be me. Yep.
Yes.
Rock on. Robbie, I think you had said something that you were interested in.
I'm looking through TAS episodes right now. I definitely want to tackle that because I think the campier side of Star Trek is always fun to delve into. And there are a few episodes of TAS that are legitimately good Star Trek episodes. We definitely don't get some of the worst animation until later on in the little run of TAS. So I think we'll have a good time going through some of that.
Robbie, in our music and Trek episode, I brought up the TAS soundtrack as being something that I really like about Star Trek in general.
It's great.
Yeah, Scott, I don't think if you don't have an answer, that's okay.
Well, I think at some point the topic went to the idea of just discussing bad episodes that we actually liked. So,
or a really good episode.
Right. So in the same vein of, defending Spock's brain, I'm taking on The Thaw.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to have you and Vanessa in the same room, and we are going to have some fun. All right. And Nathan, I don't know if you're going to stick around with us, but if you had a chance to talk about any Star Trek topic with a group of people, what would it be?
Well, it would be Spock's brain, but I don't know if there's another one. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah, there is actually an 8th. We've got 8 episodes and 7 general people in the group. You make 8, but
all right, I'll see if I can think of something.
I put you on the spot there. It's all right.
No, it would be Spock's brain. We're just that's already on the calendar.
Awesome. Sweet. All right. Well, this has been a fun talk about Picard. We've been here for a couple hours. I hope we don't have to be here anymore talking about the show because it was, as we all agreed, pretty much just okay.
I want to interject, actually.
I
really did enjoy the episodes 1 to 9. If episode 10 was like a more satisfying finale, I actually would have ranked this series more highly.
That's fair.
Which sounds a bit more controversial, maybe, but definitely, yeah. I mean, I said it was probably my favorite out of the 3. So,
yeah, it had a lot of potential. It had a really strong start. But yeah, we will see you guys back here at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. Thank you, all of my co-hosts, for joining me here this week. And we will catch you again next week, Buffer Timers. Until then, live long and prosper.